Spec Editor is the tool that we use to add or modify the items that are contained in our spec sheet. Let's go ahead and open a spec and take a look at all the different functions that we have available. So we're going to go to our File, Open Spec, Desktop, Exercise Files, Spec Sheets, and we're going to go with CS150. So here we can take a look at what we have in this area here. We have this little option of closing down the catalog. If we don't want to look at the catalog right now, we can just close that down, and that increases our spec viewer window just a little bit more. So what you see is the standard spec sheet. We're going to take a look at some of the functions that we have. Up on the top right, to change the spec, we can just highlight the spec. We can open a new spec. I'm going to open the CS300, and you'll see that that's now filling up in our spec window. If we want to go back again, it will keep the last few that we looked at in memory, and we can just toggle between them. Basically, what the spec contains is general information about the components. So we have these organized by type, and we have them filtered by minimum size to maximum size. We have a basic long description for the entire part set, so we're not using sizes in the description. And we also have our part priority and our branch. If you see a triangle, that means that we're using part priority, or we have the ability to assign a part priority. If you see the circle, that means that the part priority has already been set up. If we require a branch table for connections, you'll see that there's a check mark against a lot of the connections. So the OLEDs, pipe for stubbins, T's, anywhere where you have a branching component, those should be in the branch table editor. Although I will say they're not mandatory. It's up to you if you want to use them or not. It's recommended just if you want to control the type of connections that are available to your designers. That's a good way just to police that there and make sure that everybody's adhering to the specs. So let's take a look at the edit parts. So if we want to take a look at the pipes, we can see that we're allowing a 1/2 inch to 24 inch. If we look at the different parts by size, we can see all the information that we have here. And this is pulled exactly from the catalog. So you can see standard information such as the diameter, the units. We have some face-to-face dimensions, some weights, diameters. So each one of these is specific to that part size. So this is by size number. If it's a 4 inch, this is all the information that's relevant to that 4 inch component. So we can actually go through and add information here. We'll look at that at a later video too. But we can add information in here. And the difference is that what we add in here is part of the spec. We're not changing the catalog. So anything that we do add is only visible on the components that have been added to the spec, not the catalog. We can also add properties. So we can add a specific custom property to any part item that's in our spec too. We can add notes, which allows us to put just a little bit of administrative text. When we print the spec out, it will print the notes so that you can see any comments that have been made by the team or any just specific information that doesn't necessarily need to be embedded in the spec, but is useful to know. The other item we have here is our layouts and settings. So let's take a quick look at that. And what this does is just give us a different way to display what we see in this window here. For example, we're looking at each one of these. We have the OLED, we have the pipe, the reducer, the T, and under each of these headings are the different types of components. For example, the T, we're showing here the different types of Ts that are available. So I'm going to change this from a part name to a part category. And I'm going to apply and say OK. So you notice the headings have changed. So we have fittings. Before we'd have the elbows separate from the Ts. This is lumping everything in together. So it's a little bit more difficult to find the components that you're looking for this way. But it is an option that's available. So I'm going to change that back to our part name because that makes sense. And the other thing that we have the option to do is we can change the long description. We can do that by a part size style. I'm going to show you, for example, how that works. Now you'll notice the reason this looks a little strange is because it's taking the elbow description and it's actually placing a size in there. So even though the filter is telling us that this could be anywhere from a 3 inch to 24 inch, it's actually calling it out as an 8 inch. Which is something that you could do. But again, it's sort of counterintuitive because you don't want to see that here. We just want to know that it's going to be some form of an elbow between 3 inch and 24. But again, just personal preference and options. And I'm going to set that back to no style. And if we want to remove components or add components, we do that by the 2 buttons we have on the bottom here. I'm just going to bring our window back up for the catalog. And for example, if I don't want to use the street elbow anymore, I just highlight that and remove from the spec, and you'll see that it's gone from that list. And if I want to add something back in, I'm going to just take what's on top of the list here, this check valve. I'm just going to say add to the spec. And if we look down at our valves list, you'll see that we should have that check valve. There it is, the dual plate 150 pounds. So it's very simple to add and remove things from the catalogs using the buttons, and it's very intuitive. So now that we understand some of the basics of what goes into a spec sheet, I'm sure you can see why it's a very complex document, and we should always make sure that that document is controlled by somebody who understands the requirement of good spec maintenance.